So you submit a data request and you wait for 2 weeks. And the analyst comes back with a beautifully built dashboard and it answers completely the wrong question. Sound familiar? Well, that's not a data problem. That's a collaboration problem. And in most cases, it starts with the product manager. Now in this video, I want to give you the context you need to understand why data teams exist and what they actually do, and the 3 things that will completely change how you work with them. So you stop waiting for insight and start making decisions faster. So let's get into it. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Teresa. I'm a leadership and a career coach based in Melbourne, Australia. And this channel is all about helping you do great work and make sure it gets seen. Because effort alone isn't just enough. You need clarity, influence, and confidence. And if that sounds useful, please subscribe to this channel. So let's start with, why does data team even exist in your company? Now, over the last decades, companies stopped making decisions based on just talking to customers. The competitive environment has completely changed. So think about what you're building now compared to 10 years ago. Your product generates thousands, sometimes millions of user interaction every single day. Clicks, drop-offs, session lengths, feature adoptions, error rates, purchase events. Every action a user takes is a data point. And if you're not reading those signals, well, your competitors are. Now, according to the G2 Big Data Statistics Report, the big data and analytics market grew from $104 billion in 2023 to $118 billion in 2024 and is projected to reach $1.5 trillion by 2037. Almost every major tech company, for consumer apps to fintech to SaaS, has built a dedicated data function. And the company that just do well doesn't just report on the past, they report on what to shape, what to do next. Now, the performance gap is real too. Research from Accenture found that data-driven organizations generate more than 30% annual growth on average compared to their peers or competitors. And a study from Cloud Talk found that businesses using customer data platform experiences over 9 times greater annual growth than those that didn't. So here's what it means for you as a product manager. You are no longer the only person in the building responsible for understanding your customer. Your data team sees your product completely through a different lens. One built from patterns across thousands or millions of user sessions that no product manager, no how senior, can access by observation alone. Now, companies that grow fastest are the ones where product manager and data teams operate as a genuine partnership, not as a client and vendor relationship. That shift starts with understanding who you are actually working with. So here's what most PMs get confused. They send every data question to the data team without understanding the data team has very different people in it and doing very different jobs. So there are 3 core roles you will encounter, and knowing which one you need and when will save you weeks of back and forth. Number 1 is the data analyst, is your most frequent collaborator. A data analyst collects, cleans, organizes, and analyzes data to identify patterns and insight, translating raw numbers into decisions. They are the bridge between technical data and business strategy. They work with structured data, clean, organized data sets to answer the question, what is happening? They build dashboards, they run cohort analysis, they track your funnel, and they measure whether a feature is performing or not. So when do you engage them? Whenever you need to understand the current or historical performance. You're running a sprint retrospective and you want to know what's to move on. You've just shipped a feature and you want to measure adoption. You're going into a prioritization session and you need to know where users are dropping off. That's your data analyst. The second are the data scientists that goes further. They don't just describe what happened, they ask why is it happening and what is likely to happen next. A data scientist's primary domain is modeling, creating statistical and machine learning models that uncovers patterns, make predictions, and allow organizations to move beyond descriptive analytics into predictive and prescriptive insights. They run your A/B tests that identify patterns across complex, often messy data sets. And they use machine learning to find signals that a human analyst couldn't surface manually at scale. Despite the technical complexity of the role, communication is considered by one of the most important skill sets for data scientists because insights are worthless if they can't explain to people making decisions. So when do you engage them? When you need to move from descriptive to predictive. You want to understand what's driving the churn, not just how many customers churn. You're designing an experiment to test whether a new onboarding flow actually changes long-term retention. You need someone who can separate correlation from causation, and that is your data scientist. Finally, the data engineers is probably one of the most overlooked until something breaks. Now, a data engineer develops and maintains data architecture and pipelines, building the program that generates data in a way that ensures the output is meaningful for operations and analysis. They don't just analyze data, they build and maintain the infrastructure that makes it all possible. The pipeline that collects your data, the systems that cleans it and transforms it, the data warehouse that your analysts query. Without a data engine, your analyst has nothing reliable to look at, and your data science has no clean data sets to model. So when do you engage them? Whenever you're building a new product feature that needs to be tracked. Whenever you're set up a new experiment and you need events instrumented. Whenever your data is incomplete, inconsistent, or arriving in a wrong format. You don't just go to a data engineer for analysis, you go to them to make sure that the data infrastructure can support the analysis that you are planning. So here is the key insight. These three roles form a chain. The data engineer builds the foundation, the analyst reads the foundation, and the scientist builds a model on top of it. As a product manager, you will work mostly closely with analysts on a day-to-day basis. You'll pull in data scientists for strategic questions and experiments. And you will need to flag requirements to data engineers early, because if they're not in the conversation at the start of your sprint, you'll probably often find out at the end that your data that you needed was never tracked. Now, understanding who is on the data team is only half of the equation. The bigger question is, why do so many product managers and data collaborations break down even when the smartest people are involved? Here's my answer. The collaboration fails before it even starts because the working relationship was never set up properly. Most product managers treat data teams like a request queue. You put in a ticket, you get back an insight, rinse and repeat. And in that model, you're not collaborating, you're just ordering from a menu. The shift I want you to make is from client to partnership, and that comes down to three things. The first one is what I call the translation layer. So here's a myth for you. You don't need to understand data work to work with data people. You just tell them what you need and they'll figure it out. That's how you end up with the wrong dashboard 2 weeks later. So here's what nobody tells you. You don't need to be a data scientist, but you do need to speak 2 languages: business outcome and data fundamentals. I was working with a product team that focused on improving user retention. Now, the product manager went to the analyst and said, "Can you please pull a report on retention?" Well, that actually sounds pretty reasonable, right? It's not a brief. Retention on what time frame? From what cohort? Which user segment? What's the trigger event you're measuring from? What does retention even mean in your product? A login, a completed action, a purchase? Well, the analyst made assumptions. The product manager had a different assumption. 2 weeks later, the report landed and the team spent the entire review meeting debating whether the numbers were right instead of making a decision. What the product manager could have said is, "I want to understand whether users who complete onboarding in their first session have higher 30-day retention than those who don't? Can we run a cohort analysis from account creation to key action? Now, same business problem, completely different brief. One that an analyst can action without following up the meeting. The translation layer isn't about becoming technical. It's about learning enough what a cohort analysis is and how funnels work, the difference between correlation and causation, so that you can be a good partner to your data team. The product manager who gets the fastest, sharpest insight are the ones who invest in this. Not because they need to do the analysis job, but because a great brief gets you useful answer. A vague brief gets you a beautiful spreadsheet that answers the wrong question. The second one is what I call the respect gap. Most product managers treat data collaboration as a ticket system. You put in a request, you get back output. And in that model, the analyst is a resource, not a thinking partner. So here's what costs you: the instinct that data scientists and analysts have built from seeing the patterns across your product. And those patterns no single product manager has ever made into your decisions. I worked with a data scientist who halfway through the discovery sprint flagged something that nobody has asked about. The team was investigating why paid conversion was dropping, and she had been included in the user interview not to take notes but to listen. And she noticed that every user who churned at the payment step had landed on the product through a specific acquisition channel. Nobody had connected those two data sets. Nobody had even thought about it. But because she was in the room during discovery, she had the context to connect what she was hearing and what she was seeing in the data. Now that finding saved the team from optimizing the wrong part of the funnel entirely. This is what happens when you close the respect gap. The practical shift: bring your analysts into your discovery phase. Walk them through the problem space before you write the brief. Ask them, what do you think is driving this? What would you want to look at first? You'll be very surprised by the quality of the answer. The data team doesn't just want to build a dashboard. They want to solve problems, but they can only do it if you let them into the problem. The final one, and the one I see overlooked most consistently, is what I call the shared definition. So here's how it plays out. A product manager and a data analyst are aligned on the problem. They've been talking regularly, the sprint wraps up, and the analyst presents the number. And the product manager says, wait, how are you identifying active user? Everything stops. The product manager defines active as someone who logs in once in every 30 days window. The analyst defines as someone who completes at least 2 core actions. 2 reasonable definitions, 2 completely different numbers. And now you're in a review meeting arguing about the measurement methodology instead of making a product decision. Now this is one of the most expensive time waster in a product and a data relationship. And it is entirely preventable. So here's the discipline. Before the sprint starts, before a brief is even written, define 3 things together. Your North Star metric, the single number that tells you if this initiative is working. Not 5, 1. Your supporting metrics, the 2 or 3 signals that tells you why the North Star is moving or not. These are your diagnosis layer. Your guardrail metrics, the things that you are not willing to break. So if you are optimizing activation, you don't want to tank long-term retention to get there. Guardrail metrics to keep you honest. The shared definition isn't a data conversation. It's a strategy conversation that helps you to be grounded in data. And it is one of the clearest signals that a product manager is operating at a very high senior level. So here's where we've landed. Data teams aren't a support function. They're a competitive advantage if you know how to use them. And using them well starts with understanding who you're actually working with. Your data analyst answers questions of what is actually happening. Your data scientist answers why and what happens next. Your data engineers make sure the data exists in the first place, knowing which one you need and loop them in early. And then remember the 3 shifts. The translation layer. Learn enough to write a brief your analyst can actually action. The respect gap. Bring your data team into the problem, not just the solution. The shared definition. Define your metrics together before a single query gets run. Here's what I want to leave you with. The product manager who gets the most out of their data partnership are not the ones who understand the data best. They're the ones who make it easy for the data team to do great work. You are not the smartest person in the room about data, but you are the one responsible for making sure the room is having the right conversation. If you find this video helpful, please hit the like button, subscribe to this channel, and if you want to comment on what are some of your biggest challenges working with data, please drop in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.